I want to introduce a person who's going to be doing our webinar today, and his name is Daniel M. Clark. How you doing, Daniel?
I'm great, Jim. How are you?
I'm doing really great, and the reason we wanted to have you on is because you've been doing podcasting a lot more than everybody else for the last couple years or longer. And Daniel is going to present the 5 rock solid reasons to podcast today. So sit back and relax, and we'll give the microphone to Daniel here in a second. But I do want to tell you a little bit more about Daniel. Um, He's a podcaster and a podcasting production consultant since 2008. To date, he's published nearly 200 episodes of various shows and helped many people start their own shows or make existing shows better. Now, I've been on many podcasts with Daniel before, and I can attest that he's got the whole system down in terms of the equipment and the sound and the production and all that. And I will just add my little piece to this. Daniel's going to come in and tell you why podcasting is so important. But I'm going to add my little piece to this before we do that, which is, this is such an important thing for you to really consider moving forward for your business. And I don't want to steal any of Daniel's thunder, but producing podcasts and putting your voice on the internet or in someone's MP3 player really creates a strong bond with that person, and it's like talking to someone on the phone. They hear your voice, they hear your inflections, and it begins to build a relationship with them that you need to have if you're going to be successful and sell to them and make them a customer. So this presentation is going to be an overview of the power of those things and the power of podcasting for networks, for merchants, and affiliates. We'll have a lot of the affiliate focus in here. And this 5-point list should convince you to give podcasting a shot. Now, if Daniel doesn't convince you to give podcasting a shot, Daniel, do you have a money back guarantee?
Oh, absolutely. Money back guarantee for your free webinar. Yep.
All
You
right,
got it.
exactly. That's how we do things here. So what we're going to do is we're going to give Daniel the controls here right now. I'm going to change you to a panelist. And hopefully your screen will pop up here. And then make sure you click share my screen, Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
And then load up your presentation.
Give me a cue when you can see me, and I'll start my slideshow.
Okay. Hit play. And if you're on the line, bear with us. We're going to have Daniel start in a second. And just so you know, we will be taking questions at the end. Daniel will probably run about 40, 45 minutes, maybe less. We'll see. And ask any questions you want at the end, and I will be happy to ask them to Daniel for you. Just use the interface on the GoToWebinar controls. And without further ado, I give you Daniel Clark.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate that. I think you pretty much covered everything. So thanks for coming, everyone, and have a good night. Um, my name is Daniel M. Clark, and I'm a podcaster, like Jim said. Jim actually was one of my first guests on one of my first podcasts. I was going back through my archives the other night, trying to find a few things to talk about on one of my upcoming shows. And I did an episode called, it was number 20 and a half. It was my first solo podcast. I had been doing a show with a couple of co-hosts. We did 20 episodes, and then I did a half episode because it was just me. The episode before that was with Jim, and he was a great guest, and he's been on my shows since then a couple of times, and he's always been a great guest. So thanks for the introduction, Jim. I appreciate that. I am here to talk about 5 rock-solid reasons to podcast, why I do it, and why I think you should too. A little bit about myself. Like we said, I began podcasting a few years ago, back in 2008. My first show was called Geek Dads at Home. I started that show with Sam Harrelson and Joe McGinnis. Joe is one of my current co-hosts of Geek Dads Weekly, the show that previous podcast transitioned to. But yeah, we started that podcast in 2008, just a few days after my son was born. And we were talking on Twitter one day, and we were lamenting how the mommy bloggers were getting all the media attention. Said, why aren't dad bloggers getting any attention? Well, we decided that we were going to change that. So we decided to start a podcast called Geek Dads at Home. We were all work-at-home dads. And it's lasted, in a couple of incarnations, it's lasted since 2008. We transitioned from Geek Dads at Home to Geek Dads Weekly in 2010. I did a year and a half now as Geek Dads Weekly with Joe McGinnis and Drew Bennett from benspark.com. I'm currently producing 4 shows. You can see the logos there at the bottom of the screen. Be a Better Podcaster is my show about podcasting. Geek Dads Weekly, as I said. Inside Internet Marketing is the stories behind the players in the internet marketing space. Had 17 or 18 great interviews so far with people like Sean Collins and Missy Ward and Jim Kukral. My 4th show is called Yet Another Weight Loss Show because what the world needs is yet another weight loss show. I began consulting in 2011, just a few months ago. And I'm into affiliate marketing, a little bit of blogging. And like I said, I'm a work-at-home dad. I've got 2 kids. And my contact information is right there on the screen. Twitter, QAQN, Facebook.com/TalkQAQN. My direct email address to get in touch with me, Daniel@QAQN.com. Give me a call, 281-241-QAQN, 281-241-7276. So, 5 rock-solid reasons to podcast. Why do I do it? I told you why I got started, but why did I keep doing it? Well, for one thing, it's fun. That's not a bullet point, but overall, that is the main reason why all of this happens. It's fun. My 5 rock-solid reasons to podcast begins with, number 1, it's portable. It travels really well. If you're looking to consume information, nothing beats podcasting for consumption anywhere. With TV and movies, you need a screen to look at. Same with websites and books. I mean, you want to read a book, you got to hold something, you got to look at it, right? Try doing any of those things while you're driving a car. But you can listen to a podcast anytime, anywhere, with an iPod, a Zune, or something similar, any kind of portable media device. You can consume that content in the car, at the gym, on a train. You can listen to a podcast while you're skiing down a mountain if you want to. It goes anywhere. Podcasting even beats radio. And if you travel through a tunnel on your way to work, you know that radio is not ideal for go anywhere consumption, but podcasting is. Next slide. The ultimate portability. Yes, you don't need an internet connection either. You download your podcast, you sync it to your device, and you go on your way. Now, let's say that you're let's look at the chart here. You are driving, you are running, or you are in public. Okay. Now, if you're on the web, if you want to look at a website, can't do it while you're driving. And if you're running, I mean, come on, you're gonna bounce that screen in front of your face while you're running? Of course not. Now, if you're in public, sure, you can look at websites in public, but as long as privacy is not a concern, because people are going to look over your shoulder. Same with TV and movies. Books and magazines, okay, sure. Yeah, you can do that in public, but again, not while you're driving or while you're running. Radio is great, like I said, unless you don't live near mountains or a tunnel or natural interference. Radio comes close. The only thing that comes closer are audiobooks. The only thing that comes close to podcasting in terms of portability is audiobooks. But they do have a main drawback, though. Most podcasts are free. Most audiobooks are very much not. You're going to pay $10, $20 for an audiobook. You can download 3 hours of a podcast for free. Most podcasters have their shows up absolutely free of charge. Some charge for archives. I know some podcasters that will charge a monthly fee to access their archives. Some podcasters like to only put their most recent episode up, but personally, I'm not a big fan of that model. By and large, vast majority though, podcasting, the norm is free. So, ultimate in portability. Number 2, It's completely unregulated. There's no one telling you what you can say or how you can say it. How many people remember this movie, Pump Up the Volume? Samantha Mathis was in it. Pump Up the Volume couldn't be made today. It wouldn't make sense. It was the story of a pirate radio host. Well, these days, Harry would be a podcaster. I mean, why bother with pirate radio? It only reaches the people in your town or nearby towns if you have a strong signal. You can reach everyone on the planet with a podcast. Now, the government's not going to come down on you. You can use any profanities you want, talk about any topics you want, and you don't have to worry about being fined or arrested. The only thing that the movie had that's missing from a real podcast is Samantha Mathis. Nobody can tell you what to say. Not the FCC, the MPAA, the RIAA, the NCAA, ABC, NBC. They have no control over what you say in your podcast. There's no regulation. Now, if you want to get into iTunes, you can still say whatever you like. You may not be featured, but you can say whatever you like on your show. They don't discriminate based on language or content, with a few exceptions. They're not going to let you in if you're promoting hatred and violence and the same kind of rules that any third-party directory is going to impose on you if you're submitting your content to them. There are some very fine lines, but by and large, swear all you want. Some quick examples of a few podcasts that are clean and, well, not so clean. My shows on QAQN are not explicit. Geekcast.fm, if you're familiar with Geekcast, lots of affiliate marketing podcasts, internet marketing podcasts. I can't think of any that have any explicit language on them. For clean comedy, The Ramen Noodle is a good one. How about Lifehacker for education? Stuff You Should Know is a great podcast. I think most business and training shows tend to lean towards not explicit or clean. Most comedy shows, on the other hand, seem to be explicit more than anything else. Some of my favorites, Jordan Jesse Go, Kevin Smith's Smodcast network is doing really well. More than anyone right now, I think, Kevin Smith is really making podcasting more mainstream. So I have a lot of respect for that. Greg Proops, The Smartest Man in the World, Doug Loves Movies, great podcasts, not for all audiences. So just to show that if you have a desire to start a podcast and you want to use profane language, go right ahead, because some of the most popular ones out there do. You can't use that as a reason not to start a podcast. If that's your personality type, go for it. Don't change. Be yourself. My third rock solid reason to podcast. Competition. There's not much out there. Not everyone's doing it. Now, unlike blogging, which feels like everyone and their dog is doing, podcasting is undertaken by a relatively small number of people. I would never try to say that it's easy to dominate, because it's not. You do have some really tough customers out there that's going to be hard to beat. I mean, if you go to the comedy section of iTunes, you're going to find some big names there. But it's not hard to get popular. So let's look at a couple of numbers here. Blogs versus podcasts. And I'm comparing blogs to podcasts because probably everyone watching this right now has started a blog. So statistically speaking, you probably have. Okay, statistically speaking, you probably consider yourself a blogger in some form or fashion. Except for Jim, who has quit blogging. But if you look at Wikipedia, okay, Wikipedia says that there are 156 million blogs worldwide, which I suspect is a low estimate. Compare that to another. Every now and then I trip on my words. Compare that to the number of podcasts in iTunes. 150,000 is the estimate, unofficially. But look, if you add a zero to that, 1.5 million, that's still a fraction of blogs. And yet everyone is so eager to jump into blogging. Why? Your competition is 156 million sites. Your competition is so much lower getting into podcasting. You have a better chance of being seen. You have a better chance of building an audience. And if you can build an audience with your podcast and direct them back to your blog, well, now you've got a twofer, don't you? Now you've got a successful podcast transition into a successful blog. Start the other way around, start with a blog. You've got an uphill battle. And you can add a podcast to your blog, but if no one is visiting the blog to begin with, the podcast being there doesn't necessarily help. So I say, start with a podcast. Work iTunes. Work the rankings. Ask people for feedback and star ratings in iTunes. Get your name out there as a podcaster, and then transition that into a successful blog. In any given category, it's nearly impossible to get a 100% accurate count. Okay, but I'm going to work off of the 150,000 estimate. Comedy, I think, is the most popular category. Let's say there's 60,000 comedy podcasts. Let's say there's 30,000 business podcasts. Or 15,000 music podcasts if you want to do news or kids and family. Maybe there's only 10,000 podcasts. That's going to stop you? Why would that stop you? There's no real competition there. I mean, as far as competition of scale, you're not competing with millions of other websites. 156 million blogs. You could start a comedy podcast and stand a fairly good chance of doing well if you're funny. You could start a business podcast, and if you know what you're talking about, you stand a real good chance of having a successful business podcast. I mean, let's say there's 100,000 blogs about marketing and how to make money online. There's probably only 99,000 podcasts about. No, that might not be a good example. But don't let the number of podcast producers fool you into thinking that nobody's listening. Okay? Just because there's only maybe 30,000 business podcasts doesn't mean that there aren't listeners. Billions of episodes are downloaded every year. That's according to Wizard Media. That's the company that owns Libsyn.com. They're a media host. They host podcasting files, MP3 files. Billions of episodes are downloaded every year. Podcasting has fans. And that's just one service. That's not counting download numbers from Blueberry or Podcast Alley. PodcastAlley.com is a great resource. So podcasting has fans, that has listeners. And to me, that's a rock solid reason to podcast. Now, two more things before we leave this one. First, you have to account for the dead. Once you're in iTunes forever. Okay, my first podcast, Geek Dads at Home, is still listed in iTunes. But I haven't produced an episode for it since January 2009. 2010, rather. Think about that for a minute. If there's 60,000 comedy podcasts, for example, how many of those do you think are really updated on a regular basis? How many blogs do you go to that have been abandoned? People abandon podcasts all the time. It's common. There's a word for it, too. It's called pod fade. They call it pod fading when people just kind of abandon their shows. Some percentage, a significant number of podcasts in iTunes, in every directory, haven't been updated in months or years, and they are not your competition. So what if there are 30,000 business podcasts? What if half of them were dead? What if half of them haven't been updated since 2009? 2006, 2004. It's possible. It's possible that somebody started a podcast in 2005 and haven't updated it since a month after the first episode came out. They're still listed, though. They're not your competition. Take that into account. Now, the second thing is, this is just iTunes I've been talking about, and I alluded to it, but Libsyn.com, Blueberry.com, PodcastAlley.com, there's Podfeed.net, Podcast.com, and PodcastDirectory.com, to name only 6. There are dozens of places to get podcasts. There are dedicated apps for iOS and Android for going out and finding podcasts. You're not limited to iTunes. iTunes is the most high profile, and if you're not listed in iTunes, you're doing yourself a real disservice, but there are many, many other resources for podcasters out there. Next up, podcasting is really inexpensive. It's as cheap as free in some instances. For a beginner, a computer and a headset are all that's required for a decent sounding show. Decent sounding show. You could even do it without the headset and come out somewhat decent. Talk into your laptop's built-in microphone in a quiet room without a lot of echo in the background, and you can do a podcast fairly well. It's not going to sound professional. You know, if professional is what you're going for, it's not going to sound ultra slick, but you can do it, and it'll be decent. On a scale of 1 to 10, maybe it'll be a 6. If you can live with a 6, you can do podcasting for free. Let's look at nowhere near free. I mean, look, you can spend $30,000 on podcasting equipment. You could get the best microphones. You could get the best mixer. You could get the best hardware available and spend 30 grand. I've spent about $1,100 so far. I've got a Heil PR40 microphone. I've got a Mackie 802 VLZ3 mixer. I've got a nice pair of Shure headphones and a Tascam DR07 recorder. I spent about $750 on hardware so far. And I got a couple more pieces that I want to put into the chain too. It's going to run me about another $200. Software, we're going to look at how you can do this for free, but I've spent the money on Adobe Audition because it's a fantastic piece of software. It's worth it to me, and I think my shows sound just a little bit better because of it. But if you don't want to spend that kind of money, you don't have to. Let's look at almost free. Hanging up behind me on the wall, I've got a Plantronics Audio 655 USB headset. Cost me $30. I've used many, many headsets in my time. I've got kids. They get broken, you know? The kid grabs the headphones and snaps them in half. So for a while there, I was going through 2 or 3 headsets a year. $20, $30 a pop. Almost free for the hardware. It's reasonable. Software, Audacity, completely free. Open source. PC, Mac, doesn't matter. Whatever you got, it'll run it. Audacity is a fantastic program, and I highly recommend it. It's not quite as good as Adobe Audition, but, you know, it's like saying that, you know, GIMP is nowhere near as good as Adobe Photoshop. You know, there's a reason that Photoshop is the leader, the market leader in professional level graphics creation, right? Adobe Audition, same thing, pro level. But Audacity is, hey, for a free solution, it's awesome. Go check that out. Now, I can do you even better than that. Like I said, hey, use your computer's built-in microphone. It's free. Pair that with Audacity, also free. And now you're podcasting at no charge. Now, I'm not going to, you know, hey, yeah, you need a computer, okay? You need an internet connection. So, okay, it's not completely free. You got to have a computer and you got to have an internet connection. But you know what? You don't even need your own website. It's like I was saying earlier. You don't need one. All you need is a media host, and there are media hosts out there that will host a show for you for free. You can upload your MP3 file to them for free, and then you give iTunes the RSS feed from that host. And now you're listed in iTunes. And now you're podcasting completely for free. The last thing I want to talk about is expectations. They're really low from an audience standpoint. It's an important thing for me because, yeah, I know I put out 4 or 5 shows a week, but I'm a work-at-home dad. I can't do something every day on a schedule and expect to keep to it because things get in the way. You know, family, kids. It's tough. How many times have you heard that if you want to be a successful blogger, you have to blog daily? It's almost common wisdom, right? You hear it from everybody. All the gurus out there, all the blogging gurus tell you, all the experts say, you got to write something daily. And if they're not saying daily, they're saying 5 times a week. Now, if you're podcasting, though, one time a week. If you can do 20 minutes per episode once a week, you're good. That's a podcaster. That's what's expected. More is better, of course, but once weekly is the norm. I do 4 or 5 shows a week on a good week, and that's great. But if I was only doing 1 show, and for a while I was, only doing 1 show weekly, that's good. I'm a podcaster at that point. Anything more than that, and you're downright prolific. Now, having said that, I looked at the top 10 lists in iTunes recently. In the comedy section, only 3 of the top 10 are once weekly shows. In the business section, only 4 are once weekly. And in music, half of them are once weekly, but still. Now, if you want to dominate the top 10, if you want to crack that top 10, yeah, maybe step up your game. Maybe publish an episode every other day. Maybe you're going to do one 5 times a week. Maybe you're going to go daily. I know some folks that have done a podcast daily for quite a while. But you don't have to. You can get into the top 10. Now, like I said, in comedy, there are three shows there that are done once weekly. It is possible. You don't need to bust your butt to crack the top 10 if that's not your natural flow. You got to figure out what your natural flow and rhythm is and find out what you're comfortable with. If you can do it more than once a week, great. If not, 20 minutes once a week and you're good to go. Half an hour? Yeah. An hour-long show? Absolutely. In my completely informal, unscientific poll that I just made up for this segment, I can tell you that the average length of a podcast is between 45 minutes or between 30 minutes and an hour. I'm just going off my own personal experience here. The shows that I've checked out over the past many years, they generally run 30 minutes to an hour. You got some folks like Leo Laporte that do shows that are 3 hours long. Most podcasters don't do that. And the audience doesn't expect it. The expectations for a podcaster are very low. You're expected to do 20 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe 45 once a week. So, what have we covered so far? Podcasting is ultra portable. It's absolutely the most portable form of media there is, in my opinion. You can take it anywhere. It's completely unregulated. No one's going to tell you what you can and can't say. No one's going to tell you how to say it. You're not under the you're not under the control of the government or any company. Low competition. You're not competing against 156 million other people. There are relatively few people that are undertaking podcasting right now. It's inexpensive to produce. You don't have to spend a fortune. You can. If you have a fortune, go for it. And buy through and buy through my affiliate links. Low expectations. Not as much pressure. You won't feel as much pressure, I think, as a blogger would if you're trying to make 6 figures blogging, right? You got to blog daily. No, well, okay, maybe. But podcasting doesn't work that way. So, those are my 5 rock solid reasons to podcast. Once again, here's my contact information: Twitter @QAQN, Facebook TalkQAQN, Daniel@QAQN.com is the email address, and give me a call, 281-241-QAQN, 281-241-7276. Jim?
All right. Thank you so much, Daniel. And those, like we promised in the beginning, this is going to be short and sweet and packed full of rock solid reasons to podcast, and you certainly did. So now is the time for questions. So if there's anyone out there who has a question, who wants to ask it, go ahead and ask it, and I will pass it to Daniel, and we will move forward. First question is great. It says, great webinar, Daniel. My first question: what other pieces are you thinking about adding to your podcasting kit? Because you mentioned a couple other pieces of equipment you were going to add to your kit.
Right. Yeah. The next thing I'm going to get is going to be a compressor limiter gate, which is it's a rack-mounted device that. Well, let me back up a little bit. My current setup. Okay, I've got a MacBook Pro. I've got my mixer, headphones, microphone. The microphone goes into the mixer. The MacBook Pro also goes into the mixer, so I can get music and everything off the MacBook. And then I take that, I mix it all together in the mixer, and I send it back to the MacBook for Skype. So when I have co-hosts, I can have, they can hear everything that's going out from the mixer. The mixer also goes to my digital recorder, the Tascam unit that I mentioned earlier. Now, in that chain, I can put in a compressor limiter gate, which will affect the sound of my voice just a little bit. If you listen to the radio at all, that's why those guys sound so good. If you talk to them in person, they sound like just anybody, But on the radio, they sound amazing. It's because of compression. It's because they're using hardware that changes their voice ever so slightly. It's still them, and it's I don't consider it cheating either. You hear about singers that use auto-tune and things like that. That's cheating. But altering the sound of your voice just a little bit, just to get a little more punch in there, I think is fair game, and that's what I want to do. That's going to be my next piece of equipment.
Very interesting. But again, for the people who don't want to spend all that kind of money, you don't have to. I mean, I've done hundreds of podcasts as well. And literally right now, I'm sitting at my desk. I have a MacBook Pro laptop with the built-in mic, and I am talking to my laptop. There's no microphone. It's the built-in mic right from my Mac. And it's not the best sounding thing in the world, but it really does work. And that kind of goes to the next question here, which is, and it's kind of a question from me, and I want you to back it up. Is you kind of alluded to this, which is, it doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, too many people, in my opinion, don't get into podcasting or video because they're so worried that it's got to be like this beautiful, perfect thing. And the world has changed, right, with the ability for everybody to do this. In my opinion, people like things that are authentic and not perfect. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mentioned that I was going back through my archives lately and recently, and I found that old episode that I did solo, and it sounds, I cringed when I heard it. It sounded, I went, oh, I can't believe I sounded like that. Your audience does not expect you to sound like Oprah. They don't expect you to sound like Tom Brokaw, okay? Podcasting audiences, and this goes back to my 5th point about expectations, they don't expect you to sound like an audio professional. they expect you to sound like you. Now, if you can sound like an audio professional, so much the better. But they're not expecting that. And you can do a really good show. I mean, content is king, right? You hear that all the time too. If you can do a really good show with really great content, if you're talking into your laptop's microphone, fine. If you're doing it through a headset, okay. If you're doing it through $1,000 worth of audio equipment, all right, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, you're going to sound like a 10. But you know what? Someone on a USB headset, they're going to sound like a 9. Okay? It's not so dramatic a difference that that you shouldn't put off podcasting just because you're afraid of what you might sound like. If that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense, and it's the same thing I tell people. So another question is here, do you get any stats on how much traffic you get to your podcast? If so, what do you use for tracking, I guess, for analytics, actually?
Yeah, absolutely. Website tracking is going to be the same as tracking anything else, Google Analytics or whatever you like to use. All of my stuff is based on WordPress at qacoin.com. So I use Google Analytics for that. Now for the podcasts episodes, though, Google doesn't track those. So I go with, I've tried PodTrack, PodTrac, podtrack.com. They're good. They're free. And they've got some advertising opportunities for you. You can actually run your show through them, and when someone hits play on your website, what gets loaded, okay, your MP3 file can first bounce through PodTrack. They'll tack on an advertisement and split the revenue with you. Now, all of the media hosts right now have that. Libsyn, Blueberry, and a few others, they've got opportunities like that. Libsyn is good for tracking, but only if you host with them. So if you do shows that are hosted elsewhere, you can't use Libsyn.com for tracking. If you do, and I host with them for a few shows, but their tracking is very good. Blueberry, BLUBRRY.com. Blueberry.com is great. Love them. They handle my tracking for Geek Dads, Inside Internet Marketing, and Be a Better Podcaster. They're fantastic, and they'll tell you where and when someone clicked play. They'll tell you how many people came to you through iTunes versus through your website or other. If your podcast is listed at Podcast Alley, they can tell you that they clicked on it from Podcast Alley. So there's definitely a lot of tracking opportunities out there for getting some really good detailed data about who's listening and when. And you couple that with your website data, and you've got some great stats.
I have a question for you, which is, a lot of people come to me, and I read a lot of people online, and they say, well, I'm not going to do videos or I'm not going to do podcasts because nobody wants to hear about what I do. And I say, well, what do you do? And they say, well, I have a boring business. I'm an accountant, or I'm a plumber, or whatever. And again, from the perspective, the reason we're doing podcasts is to build publicity, get sales and leads for our business, right? So what do you say to an accountant who says, my stuff is boring, a podcast isn't going to work? I mean, what do you tell them?
I tell them, do you have any friends in that industry? And if you do, what do you talk about when you get together? Because that's what you're going to be podcasting about. Okay. Now, if you're an accountant, I don't know anything about accounting, but if you're an accountant and you go to a party with other accountants, right? What do you talk about? You talk about things that are going on in your industry. You talk about things that are of interest to you guys in your industry, right? That's your podcast. Okay. If you're a pet groomer, pet groomer, that's boring, right? All you do is brush a cat's hair all day long. Well, tell a funny story about the last time a cat came in and clawed your face off or something. I don't know. There's got to be something, There's something interesting about what you do to other people that do it. If there wasn't anything interesting about what you do to other people that do it, you probably wouldn't be doing it. You'd probably have a different job. So there is absolutely something that could make a good topic for a podcast. You just got to figure out what it might be.
One of the
Figure out how to.
Go ahead, Daniel.
No, I say figure out how to tell a story, and you've got content for your show.
Yeah, one of the things I've always advised people to do is be in the answer business as well. So, your customers come to you to have a problem solved, and you can answer it in blog form, you can answer it in video form, and you can certainly answer it in audio form. And do podcasts. I hear podcasts like this on the radio, not podcasts, but on radio all the time. When I during the Saturday when I'm out doing something in the yard and I'm mowing the lawn or something, I'll switch to one of my favorite stations, and they'll FM, AM stations, and they'll be having like a show talking about how to fix your car or about how to invest in stocks. So there's certainly you could do podcasts like that, couldn't you?
Absolutely. I do a podcast about podcasting. I've got one called Be a Better Podcaster, and all I do is answer questions that listeners send me about podcasting. You can absolutely do a question and answer show. You can take a question that somebody asks you, and you can do 15 minutes on it. Right. You can do an entire show on it, I suppose, if you want to.
And I always tell people that, too. If you can't answer questions about the business you're in, you probably shouldn't be in that business, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Look, you're asking me questions right now. This is what we're doing. This is a podcast right here, Now, granted, okay, it's a webinar, but after we're done here, we're going to take this and we're going to put it up on YouTube. That's a video podcast right there. If I take the audio and I put it on QAQN, that's an audio podcast right there. You're asking me questions. You can do a show where people ask you questions. If you can answer them, you've got content.
We've got more questions rolling in. One of them is, what is the way that most people consume podcasts? And I'll add to that, is it through iTunes? Is it through a web browser? Is it downloading to their MP3 player? It probably varies, but I guess the answer I'm looking for is, what's the most effective way do you think that most people want to consume it?
That's a tough one because, like you said, it does vary. It's gonna depend on a number of factors. If you're only in iTunes, then obviously iTunes is the place where you're going to have all your content consumed if you don't have a website. If you do have a website and you promote that a lot more than iTunes, then maybe you'll have more people clicking play on your website. So it really, I wish I could give you a rock-solid answer, but it really just depends.
But you should probably put it everywhere.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, okay, podcasting works off of the RSS feed, right? So you've got a URL, and you take that URL, that RSS feed URL, and you plug it into iTunes. You plug it into podcastalley.com. You plug it into the podcastdirectory.com, podcast.com, Libsyn, Blueberry, any place else that you want to be heard. You plug in that RSS feed, and you're going to find listeners all over the place. Now, are you going to have as many listeners at podcastdirectory.com as you do at iTunes? No, probably not, because their listenership as a whole is much smaller. So you're as a percentage of listeners, you're not going to find as many people, right? iTunes, I really can't overstate it enough, or I really can't understate it enough. Whatever. You got to get into iTunes. If you're not in iTunes, you're missing out on a real big opportunity for building an audience. In my experience, I'm about half and half between people clicking on my website, clicking play on my website, and downloading it through iTunes. I've talked to other podcasters that are very skewed, though. I've talked to people who say, I only get 10% from iTunes. Everybody else is on my website. I hear the opposite. I hear 10% is listening on my website. Everybody else is listening on iTunes. So, like I said, I can't give you a rock-solid answer because there really isn't one. But get it out there everywhere you can, because you're going to pick up listeners in a lot of different places. And every listener counts.
All right, we've got another question, which is, how do you do interviews with folks who are far away? I guess not in the same room as you. Mm-hmm. Over the phone, mm-hmm. Skype, do you need special equipment at this point?
No, you don't need special equipment. You need special software, if nothing else. if you don't want to do a hardware setup like I've got, you can do it with software. I can't tell you on the PC off the top of my head. On the Mac, there's a piece of software called Audio Hijack Pro, and it'll take the audio from Skype and combine that with your microphone to make a coherent podcast. There are free options for recording Skype on the PC. I know there's Pamela. Um, Now, yeah, so Skype, I think, is the number one. Phone is definitely possible. I've got a phone number that I use. I don't publish it because I do it on a case-by-case basis. If someone wants to call me to do an interview instead of doing it on Skype, I give them my Skype in number. I'm still using Skype, but they're dialing in on the phone. So there's that. Um, but anything that'll bring in someone remotely will work. So if you're using iChat, that'll work. If you're using, I don't know, Yahoo Instant Messaging, do they do voice? I don't even know anymore. I use Skype for everything, and I have been for years. AIM, does AOL Instant Messenger do voice? I think they might. But anything that you can use to get someone's voice onto your computer in a conversation can be recorded. So as long as you have recording software, you can swing that. No need for special equipment.
Yeah, I use Skype as well, and I use a piece of software that's $20. It's called Ecamm Call Recorder.
Yes.
And it's $20. I mean, and it starts when Skype starts, and when you start a conversation with somebody, it says, "Do you want to record it?" You click the red button, and the beauty of it is it records audio. But if you do a video Skype conversation, it will record the video as well and do a split screen and save it as a video file that you can upload to YouTube.
Yep.
So I mean,
I just started doing.
You have? Okay, good.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
I use I'm sorry. I use Skype still for video, and I've been broadcasting to Ustream lately, and I've been recording with that. So. I have a piece of software called Boinx TV home version actually. So I get fancy titles and everything, graphics and whatnot, and I bring in the Skype video picture in picture. It looks like Jon Stewart interviewing somebody. It's really kind of cool. I haven't uploaded to YouTube yet, but that's in the works.
So today, actually, it's kind of funny. We're doing this webinar today. Facebook just announced an integration with Skype where you will now have the ability to do chats within Facebook without even actually having to have a Skype account. Do you foresee the ability to actually be able to do not just conversations, but possibly even have recordings or do your podcast through Facebook or Google Plus in the future?
Absolutely. Yeah. Google Plus is going to be massive. I was reserving judgment when it first came out because, they had a couple of clunkers with Buzz and Wave. So I'm Google Plus, but I got an invite and I checked it out and it's fantastic. And the Hangouts feature, the video chatting feature is awesome. Facebook Skype integration, same thing. It's basically two sides of the same coin, very, very similar in functionality, I think. And I think we talked for a long time, for many years, about how the future was going to be video chatting, Jetsons style. And I think we're going to start getting there now. I really do. I think with Facebook integration on Skype and Google Plus, between the two of those, I think we're going to find video chatting to be a lot more common.
Yeah,
it hasn't really caught on.
But is that recordable? I mean, that's the question, because right now it doesn't seem like it's recordable through Facebook or Google Plus.
Oh, sure it is. Absolutely. Now, they may not have the functionality built in, but you've got software on your computer that can record anything. So, for example, on mine, I've actually got, I paid for a little program called Snaps Pro X, and it'll record any section of my screen that I want. So if I start a Facebook video chat or a Google Plus video, Hangout video chat, I can record that because I'm recording it locally on my machine. Audio and everything. Now, they may, like I said, they may not have the functionality built into their stuff, but that doesn't have to stop you. You can do it on your own. Now, there are inexpensive and I think even free ways to record parts of your screen. Yeah, you can look into a program like ScreenFlow. okay, or Camtasia. Anything that'll record your screen can record those video chats, just not through their own software, not through Facebook's software, not through Google Plus's interface. But yeah, you can do that, and I recommend it.
So I want you to tell the audience that's listening and watching,
Yeah.
how has podcasting, maybe don't use you as an example, if you know of somebody other business. I mean, how can you give an example of how it actually has really helped their business? Because I know what's happening right now. There's a lot of people who are watching this who are small business owners, bloggers, affiliates, whatever, and they're like, all right, I'm Twittering, I'm Facebooking, I'm building landing pages, and I'm writing ebooks, and now you're telling me I got to do podcasts, and my gosh, I just don't have time. I want you to just give a final push here to those people and convince them
Okay.
that this is actually going to be worth their time. This is not just one of those things that you can just wait to do. What do you say to people who have that opinion?
Well, I was always disappointed that video kind of leapfrogged audio. For a while there, go back to the early 2000s, blogging became huge, and then it seemed video took over. Video is so sexy. Everyone wants to do video. You got to have video on your website. Well, what about audio? You skipped audio. Podcasting has been around for a long time. Now, you mentioned time, right? Companies aren't sure they have time to do this kind of thing. 20 minutes a week. Maybe an hour total, including all your pre-production, post-production, editing, and anything else you want to do. Maybe an hour a week. That's not a lot of time. So don't use that as an excuse, you guys. Why should they do it? Well, I gave you my rock-solid reasons, but it's one more channel to get your message out there. Okay? Here's a couple. You know what? Here's a couple more bullet points for you. Number one, it's another channel to get your message out. You're building a completely separate audience that you hope to bleed into other channels. So if you've got, like I said, if you have a successful podcast, you can direct people to your blog or your company's website, and that's great. Okay, another channel to build your audience. Number two, it gives you credibility. Okay, anything that you do can help you build credibility. So if you've got a very professional blog attached to your website, that can increase your credibility. If you have a video series that you're doing, that can increase your credibility in your industry. If you're doing podcasts, same thing, because you're getting your voice out there. Okay, it's personable. I guess that would be number three. It's very personable. People get to know you. It's very intimate. Podcasting, to me, is one of the most intimate things. One of the most intimate forms of communication there is, along with radio and perhaps, well, just radio, really.
Right.
Because it's one person talking directly into your ears, man, There's no distractions. You can look at whatever you want. You're not going to be able to look away from the screen with a podcast. I'm in your head right now, It's very personal and very intimate. And if you're a company and you can put someone on the microphone that can really work a crowd, if they can really work an audience and be personable and engageable, if that's a word, if they can really engage with the audience, that can be a tremendous value to your company.
All right.
So
well,
those are my final thoughts.
I mean, this has been great. It looks like we are right at the hour mark, so I want to wrap it up. I want to thank Daniel so much for putting together these podcasts. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
And on behalf of the Affiliate Summit, I'm Jim Kukral, and want to thank you all for coming by and watching and listening. And if you're watching this back on a recording, thank you so much. I hope we're going to see you at a show soon. If you don't make it out to the next show, we hope we see you at the next one. Daniel will be at every show, and I'm at every show. Yeah. And you see us in the hallways, just feel free to walk up and say hello. And
come by the Blogger Lounge. I'll be recording.
There you go. Daniel will be recording the Blogger Lounge, and you can get some more personal tips from Daniel, and maybe even be on his podcast or something. So
absolutely.
Thank you so much, everybody. It's been a great time as usual. Hope you got some great information, and we'll see you at the next Affiliate Summit. Have a great day. Bye-bye.